Are you having some display exhibit entry dilemmas with county fair coming up quick? I'm Matthew Olson SDSU Extension 4-H Youth Program Advisor in Pennington County, and I've been in my job for a little bit over 3 years now. In those 3 years, I've discovered some common mistakes, some awesome tips, and also some areas of confusion for new 4-H members. Today, I'm going to go over the differences between a display exhibit entry form and a display exhibit entry card. And I'm also going to show you how to prepare several different exhibit types, such as photography exhibits, food preservation exhibits, hobbies and collection exhibits, and foods and nutrition exhibits. Now, before we get started, when you're preparing your display exhibits, there's some common items that you'll need. First, you may need some tape, so you'll want to get that out. You'll also want a pair of scissors in case you need to cut something. Some ribbon for when you need to attach your display exhibit entry card or display exhibit entry form to your exhibit, and also a hole punch so that you can punch holes in your display exhibit entry forms or display exhibit entry cards. Now, when we're talking about display exhibit entry forms and display exhibit entry cards, it's important to know the difference because in Pennington County, display exhibit entry forms aren't always required at our county achievement days. We require them if you're going to miss the interview at our interview day, or if you're going to send the exhibit to the South Dakota State Fair. There are some exceptions to this, including constructed clothing, computers and technology, food preservation, quilts, recipe adaptation, selected outfits, and cloverbud exhibits. All of those will need a display exhibit entry form, regardless of whether or not you're skipping the interview or sending the exhibit to State Fair. Now, when I say display exhibit entry forms, those are available from the Pennington County 4-H office or on igro.org, and I'll put a link to igro in the description below. Display exhibit entry forms are additional pieces of paper that ask information about the display exhibits. As you can see here, it asks several questions. For example, what did you learn in making this exhibit? What knowledge or skills have you learned in this project area this year? And what this does is gives the judge additional information about the exhibit in case the 4-H member isn't there in front of them to ask questions of. So you can see here, this is one specifically for the photography exhibits. It asks questions such as what inspired this photo, what are the most important things the judge needs to know about your exhibit. And when you're talking about those ones that require it, such as constructed clothing, computers and technology, food preservation, all of those display exhibit entry forms have information that'll be required and you'll need to know it. So with food preservation, if it's a canned item, you'll need to know whether it was pressure canned or water bath canned, how long it was water bath canned for, the ingredients, etc. So it's important to have those with you. Now, when we're talking about display exhibit entry cards, those are required for all exhibits, and those are created from the Pennington County 4-H office using the information that you put into fair entry when you registered your exhibits. When you get them from the Pennington County 4-H office, they'll be in a packet just like this. On the outside will be a list of all of the exhibits that you entered, so you can check that you have all of the display exhibit entry cards. Note that we won't print cards for you for Youth in Action or the animal shows. So when I get my static exhibit entry cards out, I want to double check that I have one for each entry. And I have 4 entries and I have 4 cards, so I know they're all there. And then I'll double check to make sure that all of the entries that I entered into fair entry are there, and they are. So I should be good to go to start preparing my exhibits. Now, the first one that we're going to start off with is a photography exhibit. Now, information for the photography exhibits can be found on pages 79 through 80 of the 2018 SDSU Extension 4-H State Fair book. When you're getting your photographs printed, they'll need to be on 8x10 pictures, and they'll be on matte or glossy photography paper. So as you can see, my photograph here is from the boxing at Wind Cave National Park, and I'll get the correct entry card out. That's this one. Now, you can use black or white 10x14 foam board to mount your pictures. This is the only color options that you can use. So other mats that you may buy locally, you can't use. It has to be black or white foam board. We have these available at the Pennington County 4-H office for sale, or you can go buy the foam board on your own and cut it out. Now, as you can see, I'm reusing the foam board, which is perfectly fine as long as when it's mounted, it still looks professional. And selecting the color that your photograph will go on is completely up to you. You want to choose the color background that will best represent your picture. So for mine, I know it was taken in a cave, and I think it looks the best on the black foam board. So that's what I'll go ahead and use to prepare my photography exhibit. Now, to adhere the photograph to the foam board, you have several options. The first option may be adhesive spray, rubber cement, or double-sided tape. Now, some of you may be thinking of using white school glue. That's not recommended because it causes the photographs to wrinkle, and we don't want that. We are judged on the quality of the mounting for our photographs, so we don't want to use white school glue. I prefer to use double-sided tape as it's a little bit cleaner and less smelly than the spray adhesive and the rubber cement. So I'm going to go ahead and put the spray adhesive and rubber cement away, and we'll get started putting the tape on the photograph. Now, when I'm using the double-sided tape, I like to put tape along the outside edges, and we want it as close to the edge as possible so that they don't peel up. And then I also put some tape in an X in the middle. The X in the middle of the photograph helps to keep the center of it down and even on the foam board. So I have the tape along the borders and an X in the middle. So I'll go ahead and center it horizontally and also vertically on the foam board. And once I have it where I feel the center is, you can also measure it to make sure it's accurate, but I'm just going to go by the eye test. I'll press it down, and as you can see, I have my photograph mounted on the foam board. Now, with mine, there's not really a clear indication of which way is up and down. That's where the display exhibit entry card comes into play, because you'll want to put it on the top left-hand side of the photograph. Now, for my picture, this is actually the top. So when I'm looking at the photograph, that's the top left-hand side, which would be right there. Now, to put the display exhibit entry card on, I'll just use a regular Scotch tape. And I'll tape it to the card and then flip it over the back. So it does cover part of the picture, but when the judge is looking at it, they'll be able to flip that over to see the whole photograph, judge it, get feedback from you, and then we can flip it back over. Now, with your display exhibit entry form for photography exhibits, you'll go ahead and tape that on the back. Again, if you're skipping the interview at our county achievement days or you're sending it to state fair, it needs to have one of these. So you'll fill it out and tape it on the back, and our photography exhibit is ready to go to our county achievement days and also to state fair. So I'll go ahead and set that one off to the side. Now, the next display exhibit that we're going to prepare is a food preservation exhibit. Information on food preservation can be found on pages 66 through 67 of the 2018 SDSU Extension 4-H State Fair book. For this, we're going to need our food preservation exhibit, which in this case is canned salsa. We're going to need the display exhibit entry form, which I've already filled out here. And it doesn't matter what color paper it's on. Using white paper that you've printed at home is perfectly fine. And we're going to want to make sure that we have the recipe source for this. And the recipe for this came from the curriculum from the National 4-H Mall on boiling water canning. It's the project manual. And inside is the recipe for the tomato salsa that I made. Now, on the display exhibit entry form, you can see that it asks for the ingredients and it specifies the amount. What I did is I went ahead and copied this page so that I could tape it onto the display exhibit entry form. We also want to make sure that we check that it was water bath canned. The altitude where we canned it was 3,202 feet, and that means the processing time was 20 minutes. We also want to include the source of the recipe, and you can see that it's also on the recipe from the project manual. Those are all required for food preservation exhibits. We also want to make sure that the jar itself has a label. So on the top of the can here, you can see the date that it was canned, which is July 21st. It was water bath canned for 20 minutes, and it also includes the recipe source. You're going to want to make sure that all of your canned items have a label on it, either on the front or on the top. Now we'll get the display exhibit entry card out, and which is right here. Now for these, the best way to attach the cards in the entry form to the exhibit is actually using string or ribbon. So I'm going to cut some ribbon that'll go around the lid of the jar. And we'll punch a hole in the top middle of our entry card. And then what we'll go ahead and do is fold our display exhibit entry form so that it is in a quarter. And then we'll hole punch the top middle of that quarter, just the front part of it. So we're not going to hole punch all the way through. We'll then take the display exhibit entry card, set it on top of the label, and we'll run the ribbon through the hole. We'll get this tied on there nicely. And when you bring this to interview day, I suggest bringing 2 cans. The first can will be the one that the judge tastes, so you'll tie the exhibit entry form to that one, so that'll be the actual one that's judged. And the judges may or may not open it and taste it. However, if they open it and taste it, that's where that second jar comes in, because you can take your display exhibit entry card and form off of the one they tasted, put it on the one that's still sealed, and that way during the week of the Central States Fair, the sealed jar is on display and you can take home the opened one and eat it rather than have it go bad during the fair. So here is our prepared food preservation exhibit. As you can see, it looks nice and it's ready to go for the judges. So we'll go ahead and set that one off to the side. And the next exhibit that we'll prepare is our Hobbies and Collections exhibit. The information for Hobbies and Collections can be found on pages 73 through 74 of the 2018 SDSU Extension 4-H State Fair book. And one important thing to know about Hobbies and Collections exhibit is that they need an exhibit summary report. This is different from the display exhibit entry form in that the exhibit summary report describes what your collection or hobby consists of. You may want to indicate if you left some of your collection at home, what was learned through the project area, why the exhibit was chosen, and then you write this as a narrative for the judges or for the public to read. So you can see here that I have the exhibit narrative, and this is actually a collection of cameras. And the reason that we started a collection of cameras was actually from the photography exhibits, and we were fascinated at the different forms that cameras had come in. So this is just a start of a collection and a small sample of it. And in the collection we have an old Polaroid camera, we have an old disposable film camera, we also have some still sealed disposable cameras. We have a very early digital camera made by Kodak. Then we have an old 35mm camera that actually still has the film in it. And if you know anything about film cameras, when I open it like this, that actually ruins the film in there. But we leave that in there so that we can see how it used to work as opposed to different forms of digital now. And so it's just a neat part of the collection to still have that film in there so we can take it out and look and see what it was like. So we have an old 35mm camera, and then we have some newer digital cameras. So a small Kodak Easy Share, And then actually we have a waterproof Nikon Coolpix camera. And we do have some that are still at home that we left. These are just the selections of the collection that we decided to bring. So all of these, along with the display exhibit summary for hobbies and collections, make up this exhibit. So what you'll go ahead and do is actually attach your display exhibit entry card, which is for right here. You'll attach it to the exhibit summary. And when you have the judge look at it, whether you're sending it to State Fair or just coming to the County Achievement Days, I would suggest bringing it in a nice container so that way you can transport it around, and then when you put it on display at the County Achievement Days, we do have a secure area for the collections and hobbies exhibits. Then you'll set it up how you want it to be displayed during the fair. So we'll go ahead and put these all back in our box to carry it with, along with the exhibit summary. And we have the entry card on there. And then on there, and this display exhibit is ready to go. So I'll set that one off to the side as well. And now that leaves our last display exhibit to prepare in my molded cookies display. So this is part of the foods and nutrition project area. And there are different types of cookies that you can enter into the fair. There's molded and pressed. So pressed cookies actually go through a cookie press, as opposed to molded cookies, which are pressed down with a fork or a glass. These cookies were actually pressed down with a glass, so those are what we call molded as opposed to pressed, because they didn't go through an actual cookie press. When you're preparing your exhibits, you want to pick out 3 samples of the batch of cookies you made. So this is all from one batch, and you want to pick out 3 that are similar in size and shape. You can see that one's a little bit smaller, so I want to pick one out that's similar to that. So all of those 3 look similar. Now when you bring them to the County Achievement Days, you can just bring them in a Ziploc bag, because what we'll do here is the judges will taste them, and then we will put them in on a white plate like this, and then a clear plastic bag. However, if you're sending a sample to the State Fair, you'll want to bring this already like this and ready to go to State Fair. Now with your cookies or foods and nutrition exhibits, you'll want the recipe on a 3x5 card, and then also your display exhibit entry card. So what you do is you'll go ahead and take these together and just put them inside here on the top like that, and then seal the bag up, and you can use tape for that. So I'll tape it up on the bottom. And now this exhibit is ready to send to the County Achievement Days or to the South Dakota State Fair. It's got the 3 examples in there, the recipe card, and also the display exhibit entry card. Now, to review what we did today in this video, is we talked about the differences between the display exhibit entry forms and display exhibit entry cards. I also showed you how to prepare a photography exhibit, a food preservation exhibit, a hobbies and collections exhibit, and a foods and nutrition exhibit, which were my molded cookies. And the sneaky thing that we did is we also gave you an example of an outstanding demonstration. So when you're preparing a demonstration for either a Youth in Action event or the South Dakota State Fair, this video, when you watch it, is a very good demonstration and what it should look like when you give one. You should be demonstrating how to do something and then also reviewing the steps and the supplies that you need. If you have any questions about this video or preparing your exhibits, please feel free to contact your local county office. And if you live within Pennington County and you're a Pennington County 4-H member, please feel free to call our Pennington County 4-H office at 605-394-2188 or email us at pennington.county@sdstate.edu. Thank you, and happy exhibit preparing.